parents called me disappointment child. Perfect sister just got fired, and now they want my help, but I'm done being family's backup plan and shocked them with my statement. The last words my parents ever thought they would hear from me were, "No." Growing up, I was never good enough for them. In their eyes, Stacy, my younger sister, was the future president of the United States. Dad even said this once during one of his many "Proud Dad" speeches. "She's going to make history," he'd proclaim, puffing out his chest as if he'd already won some national award for raising her. Meanwhile, I was the other kid, the one they kept around but didn't really expect much from. It wasn't just in words either. They showed it in 100 little ways. Every time there was a school accomplishment for Stacy, they'd be at the front of the room bragging to everyone. When I got into college, I didn't even get a pat on the back. My acceptance letter sat on the kitchen counter for 3 days. Mom saw it and said, "Oh, that's nice. You're still going, aren't you?" I had to laugh at how little she cared. By the time I turned 18, I knew I wasn't going to get any help from them. They made it clear that I wasn't worth the investment. I got a job working weekends in a warehouse and another as a waiter to pay the rent. I lived in a dorm for a while and finally saved enough to move into a small studio apartment. No housewarming calls from Mom and Dad. No one checked to see if I was okay. They were too busy pouring money into Stacy's education. Funny thing is, for someone with such a bright future, Stacy never took school seriously. Whenever our parents asked how she was doing, she would give them the same rehearsed lines. "Classes are great," or "My professors really believe in my leadership potential." They ate it up without question. The truth was, she barely passed. She'd party until 3 a.m., turn in half-finished papers, and flunk exams. But because she kept telling them what they wanted to hear, they kept funding her lifestyle. I just watched it all happen. Fast forward to adulthood, I had my own business, a small but stable marketing firm. Meanwhile, Stacy's perfect image had finally begun to crack. She had been fired from job after job, 17 in all. Each time, she had a different excuse. The company was toxic. My manager was a micromanager. They didn't value my vision. I wasn't surprised when I heard this. But my parents? They still saw her as their golden child. She could do no wrong. Until the last firing. I didn't even know she was fired again until Mom called me out of the blue. We didn't talk much unless they wanted something, so I knew something was up the moment I saw her name on my phone. "Jacob, honey. How are you?" She chirped in that fake happy tone she used when she needed something. I got right to the point. "I'm fine. What's going on?" "Well," she hesitated. "Your sister's having a hard time, poor thing. You know how tough the job market is." I snorted. "Tough for who? Stacy?" I wasn't in the mood for the usual fairy tale. She decided the corporate life wasn't for her. Mom continued, completely ignoring my sarcasm. "She has big dreams, Jacob. She wants to start her own business. But she needs a little help getting started." There it was. The real reason for the phone call. I rubbed my temple. "Let me guess. She needs money." "She's not asking for much," Mom said quickly. "Just $6,000 to help her get started. We'd give it to her, but things are tight for us right now." I'd been down this road too many times. Whenever they needed someone to bail Stacy out, they suddenly remembered that I existed. I was tired of it. "No." There was a long pause. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, as if she couldn't comprehend what I had just said. "Excuse me?" she finally asked. I said no. I'm not giving her a dime. "Jacob, honey, don't be like that. She's your sister. Families support each other dash." "No." I cut her off. Families also don't treat one of their kids like a backup plan every time the favorite kid screws up. I'm done being that guy. Find someone else to be the hero. For a moment there was nothing but stunned silence from her. I could feel the weight of years of resentment bubbling under the surface, ready to burst. She wasn't ready for this version of me. She'd never had to face it before. But I was tired of being ignored until I was useful. Mom started to stammer something about how Stacy was just going through a phase, and that I needed to understand, but I wasn't listening. I ended the call and threw my phone on the couch. They were going to have to figure this out without me. And that's how things reached a breaking point. But believe me, that was just the beginning. A few days after that call, I thought the drama was over. I expected a few angry texts from Mom or maybe some guilt from Dad, but things were quiet. Too quiet. For once, I actually believed that maybe, just maybe, they would finally leave me alone. Then Stacy showed up at my apartment. I wasn't expecting her. I heard the knock, opened the door, and there she was, standing there like she owned the place. She was wearing a designer jacket and sunglasses and holding a Starbucks cup like a prop. Same old Stacy. Always pretending her life was perfect, even as it crumbled around her. "Hey, big brother," she said with a forced smile. I crossed my arms. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, come on. Can't a sister visit her favorite sibling?" "Cut the crap. Mom called you, didn't she?" She sighed and dropped the act. "Fine. Yeah, she did. Look, I know things have been rocky between us. But I really need your help this time, Jake. Stop calling me Jake. And no. Wow. No hesitation?" She laughed bitterly. "Okay, I get it. You're mad. I know you think I'm getting special treatment, but it's not my fault. I didn't ask for any of this. You didn't say no either." I shot back. "You let them coddle you your whole life, and now you're here begging for more. You don't get to play the victim." She looked genuinely hurt for a second, which threw me off. I wasn't used to seeing her vulnerable. "I'm not here to beg," she said softly. "I came because I don't have anyone else to turn to." I didn't immediately respond. There was something wrong with her tone. I had to admit, this wasn't like her usual games. She wasn't throwing a tantrum or demanding money like she used to. "I'm serious, Jacob. I lost my job because I stole," she finally confessed. My stomach dropped. "What?" "I embezzled money from my last company," she said, her voice cracking. "They wanted to press charges, but Dad paid them off to keep it quiet. That's why they're broke now. It's also why I can't get hired anywhere else. They blacklisted me in the industry." It hit me like a ton of bricks. I had no idea it was that bad. All those firings weren't just because she was a bad employee. She had crossed a line that I never thought she would cross. And Dad, who always preached about integrity and hard work, had been covering for her all along. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. "I wish I was," she said, her voice shaking. "I thought I could charm my way out of this, like I always do, but they didn't buy it. Now I'm stuck. I need help, Jacob. Not just money. I need advice." This was unexpected. Stacy had never asked anyone for advice, especially not me. She'd always acted like she was better than the rest of us. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The petty part of me wanted to slam the door in her face. But another part, the one that still had a shred of empathy, wanted to know more. "Advice on what?" I asked cautiously. She hesitated, then stepped inside. "On how to rebuild everything. I've hit rock bottom. You've been there, haven't you? You started from nothing. I need to know how you did it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Stacy, the golden child, was admitting that she envied me. The same sister who used to laugh at my mediocre lifestyle now wanted to learn from me. "Look," I said after a moment, "if you're serious about changing, I'll give you advice. But don't expect me to bail you out of this mess." "I'm not asking for a bailout," she insisted. "I have to earn it this time." That was the most unexpected thing of all. For the first time in her life, Stacy was admitting that she needed to grow up. But it didn't end there. There were more surprises to come, some of which would change our family dynamic forever. I told Stacy I would hear her out, but I wasn't going to make it easy. She wanted advice? Fine. But I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. "All right," I said. First step, you're going to have to get a job. Any job. You're not above working in a coffee shop or waiting tables. She scoffed immediately. Come on, Jacob. I'm not flipping burgers. There it is, I muttered. You say you're serious about changing, but you're still stuck in your entitled mindset. That's why no one takes you seriously. She shifted uncomfortably. I could tell my words were starting to get under her skin. Good. Someone had to give her a reality check, and it certainly wasn't going to be Mom and Dad. Fine, she finally said. I'll get a job. But what's next? That's step 1. You prove you can handle it, and then we'll talk about step 2, I replied. Oh, and you're not living off our parents anymore. You're on your own from now on. Her eyes widened. Wait, what? I thought maybe I could stay here for a while, just until I get back on my feet. I laughed. Absolutely not. I've worked too hard to build this life, and I'm not going to let you freeload your way through it. You have your own lessons to learn. She looked at me, but didn't argue. That was a first. I wasn't sure if she was really trying or just desperate. Either way, I wasn't going to let her off the hook. The conversation ended there, and she left. I didn't expect much to come of it. I figured she'd be offended and crawl back to our parents. But then a strange thing happened. 2 weeks later, she called me back. Hey, she said, sounding more exhausted than I'd ever heard her. I got a job. I was honestly shocked. You're serious? Yeah. It's nothing glamorous, just working the front desk at a gym, but I show up every day. Well, I'll be damned, I said. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. Neither did I, she admitted. But it feels kind of good. I don't know how to explain it. Welcome to the real world, I said with a smile. It was strange. For once, she sounded grounded, as if all the layers of arrogance had been stripped away. She even started asking me practical questions: how to budget her paychecks, what kind of apartment she could afford, things like that. I gave her honest answers and advice, but I still kept my guard up. Stacy had a habit of falling back into old patterns. I had to see this through before I could trust that she had really changed. But then came the next unexpected twist. 3 days later, I received another call, this time not from Stacy, but from my mother. I debated whether or not to answer. I could already imagine the guilt trip she had in store for me. But curiosity got the better of me. Hello? Jacob, she said in a shaky voice. You need to come over. It's your father. My heart stopped. What about him? He collapsed at home. He's in the hospital. They say it might be his heart. It was as if the world had fallen out from under my feet. In spite of everything, the years of being treated like I didn't matter, I couldn't pretend I didn't care. This wasn't the kind of news I could ignore. I'll be there soon, I said and hung up. For the first time in years, I was going back to my parents' house. And I had no idea what kind of storm was waiting for me when I got there. The drive to the hospital felt like a blur. My mind raced through memories of my father. Despite how distant we'd been, there was a time when I looked up to him. When I was a kid, before Stacy took over the spotlight, he was my hero. Somewhere along the way, though, he stopped seeing me as someone to be proud of. And now? I didn't know how to feel. When I got to the hospital, Mom was pacing in the waiting room. Her face was pale and she looked more fragile than I'd ever seen her. Stacy was sitting quietly in a chair, her phone untouched in her lap, which was strange. Usually she'd be scrolling through Instagram or texting someone, but now she looked lost. Jacob! Mom rushed over and hugged me tightly. Thank God you're here. How is he? I asked. They're still running tests, she said, her voice shaking. They think it was a heart attack. I nodded and looked at Stacy. She met my eyes, but said nothing. It was a strange moment of shared understanding, as if our usual sibling rivalry had been temporarily suspended. We sat there in silence for a while, the only sounds coming from the faint beeping of the hospital monitors down the hall. Finally, a doctor came out and gave us the news. Dad had suffered a small heart attack, but they caught it early. He was stable now and would have to make major lifestyle changes, but he'd survive. Relief washed over me like a wave. As much as I resented the man, I didn't want him dead. They allowed us to see him one at a time. Mom went in first. Stacy and I sat awkwardly outside his room. She finally broke the silence. "Hey," she said quietly. "I know we had our differences, but thanks for coming." "Of course I came," I said, still a little reluctant. "I wasn't sure you would," she admitted. "I mean, after everything." I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to say something sarcastic, but I could tell she meant it. I decided to let it go. "So, what now?" I asked. "What's the plan for Dad?" "Mom's freaking out," she said. "She doesn't know how they're going to handle the bills or the stress. And, well, you know Dad. He's not very good at admitting he needs help." "Yeah. Sounds about right." There was a pause before she spoke again, and this time her voice was softer, almost hesitant. "Do you think maybe this is a wake-up call for her?" she asked. I raised an eyebrow. "A wake-up call? For what?" "For the way they've treated us. Especially you." That caught me off guard. Stacy had never admitted how unfair things had been between us. Hearing her say it now was like hearing someone admit to a secret you thought they'd take to their grave. "Maybe," I said carefully. "But I'm not holding my breath." We sat in silence for a few more minutes until it was my turn to see Dad. When I walked into his room, he looked smaller somehow. The sight of him hooked up to machines, his face pale and tired, hit me harder than I expected. "Jacob," he said, his voice hoarse but steady. "Hey, Dad," I said, coming closer. "You scared us." He chuckled weakly. "Yeah. I guess I did." We both went quiet. It was as if either of us knew how to start this conversation. There was so much baggage between us, and here we were father and son, forced to confront each other at the most vulnerable moment of his life. "Listen," he finally said. "I know. I haven't always been the father you needed." I blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean I should have been there for you more," he said. "I was too focused on Stacy's future. I thought I was doing what was best for the family, but I see now that I hurt you. I never gave you the credit you deserved. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to be angry, to tell him it was too little, too late. But another part of me, a part one hadn't acknowledged for years, felt something close to relief. I'd waited my whole life to hear those words. "I'm sorry, Jacob," he continued. "I really am." I took a deep breath and nodded. "Thank you. I appreciate that." It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. As I left the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was shifting. My family, the same one that had always kept me in the shadows, was beginning to change. But I knew better than to think it would be that easy. There were still wounds that wouldn't heal overnight. Over the next few weeks, things began to change slowly. It wasn't dramatic, there were no teary family dinners or grand apologies, but you could feel it in the little things. For starters, Stacy didn't go back to her old ways. She kept her job at the gym, found a tiny studio apartment, and started paying her own bills. I kept expecting her to slip, but she didn't. She even asked for advice once in a while, real advice, not just fishing for shortcuts. Then there was Mom. She called more often, but not just to ask for favors. It was awkward at first. She didn't really know how to make small talk with me, but she tried. One night she surprised me by bringing up something from my childhood that I had almost forgotten. "Remember that science fair project you did?" she asked me over the phone. "Which one?" I said carefully. "The one with the volcano," she replied. "It wasn't just vinegar and baking soda like the other kids. You built an entire eruption system. I remember how impressed the judges were." I blinked, stunned. "You actually remember that?" "Of course I do. I was so proud of you," she said softly. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you then. I should have." It was a simple moment, but it hit me harder than I expected. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was reflection after Dad's health scare, but for the first time she acknowledged all the little things they had missed. Dad was different too. He was taking his recovery seriously, exercising, eating better, and, surprisingly, reaching out to me. We started meeting for coffee occasionally, which felt strange at first. He'd ask about my business and really listen. During one of those meetings, he said something that surprised me. "You know, Jacob, I used to think that being great meant having a flashy title or making headlines. But now I see that being a good man, the kind of man who works hard, takes care of himself, and helps others is greatness, too." For once, I didn't have to force a polite smile. "Thanks, Dad," I said. It was as if all the resentment and bitterness I'd been carrying around for years was starting to dissipate. It wasn't gone, but it didn't weigh me down as much. Even Stacy surprised me again. One night she invited me over to her house. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small, slightly messy apartment, but it was hers. She cooked dinner, which was edible, at least. After we ate, she handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Your $6,000. She said. "I don't need it anymore. I saved it and wanted to pay you back." I stared at the envelope. "You didn't take any money from me." She shrugged. "Consider it symbolic. I owe you more than money anyway for being there when I didn't deserve it. And for putting up with me all these years." I didn't know what to say. It was like all the pieces were falling into place in a way I never thought possible. Months went by, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the disappointment kid. My parents and sister were trying to repair the damage, and I was letting them. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't have to be. We were learning to be a family again, one built on respect, not expectations. And the strangest part? I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't the backup plan, or the shadow in the family photos, or the forgotten sibling. I was just Jacob. And for the first time, that felt like enough. Sometimes life surprises you in ways you never expect.